to talk to you today about our experiences with mobile speed, and specifically about AMP and kind of what we learned from that. So I'm the SEO director for our food sites, US food sites. As Arian mentioned, it's Food Network, food.com, cookiechanneltv.com. And Scripps in general is well known for their cable TV channels, Food Network, HGTV, Travel Channel. We also have international channels that we own and operate and have joint ventures with, such as Food Network UK, Canada, as well as TVN in Poland, and Asian Food Channel. We also have digital properties that back up each of these networks, as well as we have digital-only properties like food.com, which is our UGC recipe site, similar to All Recipes. And then we recently launched the Scripps Lifestyle Studios, which is a content studio really designed to help integrate advertiser needs with content. So I want to start with our users, because ultimately I think everybody in the room knows and really focuses on what our users really want and what they need. That ultimately will lead our revenue, will drive success in our business. And all our users have missions. We call them micro moments or moments, but they all have needs. And for food, the needs are pretty clear. People want to be nourished, they want to entertain, they want to express their love and affection for other people, and they do it in a way that's changing. And many times we see those changes really come through in our analytics, but in this case, our users are spending more and more time on their mobile devices. They're in the store, they're at home, they're in their workplace. The clock is ticking for these users. They don't have a lot of time, and they need to have their mobile devices, they need to be fast. One example is this one. So it's 4 o'clock on a Tuesday. You need to put dinner on the table. You haven't even decided what you're going to do. You want to avoid the Kevin McAllister moment of just sitting there eating whatever the kid wants. You actually want to sit down at the table with your family, and so you need to be able to plan. And the planning needs to happen very, very fast, and often on your phone. So we need to be able to provide a fast experience that's high quality content with a fast experience to meet our users' needs. But really, what's the most important thing is food is so emotional and so connected to our lives. We want to help our users do the kinds of things that really bring joy in their life. For instance, they want to plan a Super Bowl party, they want to plan their kid's birthday, they want to host Thanksgiving this year with their crazy relatives, and they want to have that very, very important date night. And these types of things take the marriage of really great, strong content with making it really fast. So we see 3 factors to page speed, and these are not all factors. This is just kind of some sets that we work from as we were thinking about page speed. The first is the business factors. This is engagement, this is loyalty, this is revenue. This is really what drives your business value. When people come to our site, are they engaging in the way that we expect? Do we get the same acquisition? Do we get the same page views per visit, time on site, bounce rate? Is it what we expect is what we need? We know, and some of the metrics on here are hard to see, but these come from Google. 53% of visits are abandoned if it takes longer than 3 seconds on mobile. In fact, many people want things to load within 2 seconds. So we can see in certain charts that acquisition declines as it takes longer for pages to load. Ultimately, this drives loyalty as well, because if a user is seeking out content, scanning through search results, and they know that Food Network or someone else has a fast result and their page loads fast, especially for recipe content, it's a utility. They need to load fast so they can just make a decision. Is this the right recipe for me? If it's not, I'm going to move on to the next recipe. So it has to be something where they know when they come back to our site, it's going to be fast and they're going to get what they need. And ultimately, that's going to drive revenue. Higher engagement potentially could drive higher revenue, and that's really how we get to drive business value. Now, there's the search aspect of this, and it's a little bit controversial, only in that we don't really know how it really plays out. 2010, Google said speed is a ranking factor. Now, through the last 6 years, we haven't really seen that play out in the way that we would have hoped to understand more about it. But I think the writing's on the wall, and we see that with AMP coming out being a main initiative, that speed is going to continue to be something that's going to be focused on. And we've seen also in this year, through some press, that there's been some discussion about the next mobile friendliness update beyond interstitials that could be focused on speed. And because of that, it's worth starting to take a stronger look at how our performance is playing, especially in mobile. And then there was this thing that came out called the slow label. And if you remember this last year, everyone freaked out, at least in my company, freaked out when they saw these red slow labels appear. They could have been, these are international sites, it could have been related to something that Miley talked about with international content. But it was something that got a lot of attention. And that actually was the impetus to get a lot of work done within my company, to make some decisions about the kind of performance that we need to have. And then finally, if we really look at what Google's trying to do, is they are competing with, in new fronts now, they're competing with apps, Google's competing with other platforms, and it's all of these, they're really vying for the attention and loyalty of their users. And what better way is to ensure that Google loads fast, and that the users, or that the sites that they present in search results also load fast. If that happens, the users will return to Google to get their mission accomplished, to get the information that they need, to find the answers that they want. We also know that our competition will also focus on speed. It's an obvious one, but it's one that can help beat the drum within our companies. To say, look, our competitors are doing this. We can actually run tests against our competitors' pages, which we do, and we can say, look, they're better than us, they're worse than us. Here's what we need to do. And then, as has been talked about already, smartphones are the dominant device. They're the dominant device for mobile search, and we have. Our inflection point was actually, this is actually data from Food Network, the red being smartphones, and the blue actually being desktop plus tablet. And you can see earlier this year, this was actually in May of this year, we had an inflection point where we hit 51% and we stuck there. So it became very, very obvious that mobile has to be the strongest focus for us. So what do we do to improve mobile page speed? How do we get our teams and our organization working on this? Well, first we can do is we can use PageSpeed Insights and we can fix some problems. These are rules that PageSpeed Insight uses to determine how fast or slow a site. We get assigned a value. We all do this. We all know these scores. Red is bad, and then green is good. A 41 is not good. This is one of our recipe pages. It's not good. And there are, I'm going to try to use the laser pointer. You have your red for should fixes and consider fixes. And this one here is the one that everyone dreads. This is eliminate render blocking. JavaScript. And this is really hard to fix because there's organizational inertia to get these things fixed. Because we have relationships with partners and advertisers and all these things that want to put render blocking scripts, and they don't have the impetus to go and fix it that we need them to do. So this one is really hard to fix, and it actually is one of the biggest things that slows down the page. You've seen waterfalls for performance. You can see how long it takes and how it can block rendering of a page. And then leveraging browser caching, we do that, but sometimes our time to live is not long enough, or we can't set it in the right way. The tool comes back and gives us, says it's a problem. We compress our images, we minify JavaScript, we minify CSS, we do all these things. But the score still sticks at 41, and it became very, very difficult for us to move beyond that. So what do we do next? Well, we could redesign the mobile page. We could do that. We could reorganize the content. We could put in lazy loading, which we do. We could collapse content. We could remove things. But we still come back to some of these same issues. Because that doesn't fix the render blocking thing. It may just change the way the content's presented. And also, you start messing with how visual content looks on the page. You start making enemies within your organization. Because they all have needs and wants and priorities. So now what do? We deploy other frameworks. So we looked at progressive web apps as a way to do many things. It's a way to add functionality, to make your website act and function like an app. It also can be speed improvements as well as you enhance and progress based on the device and speed. React and Angular, web workers, and then AMP came along. So this all began last year as we started looking very closely at performance. And then AMP came along at the end of last year, and we started thinking that maybe this was a potential solution. Well, why? Well, because 50% of our visits to our site happen from Google search on smartphones. So there's a case. The other is 75% of our visits are to recipe pages. So 75% of that 50% is to recipe pages. Again, it became very clear. What really sealed it was, this is really Google's solution. I mean, I know it's open source and there's various aspects to that, but Google has been promoting AMP, has been a champion behind it, has really developed incredible tools and support and documentation that has been instrumental in development. And AMP is featured in search. I mean, as Binti talked about, the top stories carousel has been amazing for publishers. And so we can see that potentially, and we know now this to be true, that AMP is going to be integrated in many other places within the SERP. So it's very obvious for someone as dependent as us on Google into a recipe page that we need to really investigate AMP. Competitive pressure, if we don't do it, all recipes will do it, other sites will do it. We're all dependent. Recipe sites are dependent on Google in this way. It's the primary way people get recipe content. And then other services also adopt. So Twitter, Pinterest, and now Bing are all supporting AMP. So if you think about the complexity of trying to publish to multiple platforms, Instant Articles, Apple News, wouldn't it be nice to be able to publish just to AMP and then cover many other services? There's a scale there that was very enticing for our organization. But we had obstacles, as I mentioned. There was obstacles in how you think about your organization, but there's also opportunities. One obstacle is, how will this impact our engagement, and how will this impact our monetization? Will it be the same? Will it be different? And as I mentioned before also, there's this larger shift away from owned and operated into other platforms. We are having to publish content to Facebook, to Apple News, and to others. It's taking away that control, and that's very worrisome for a lot of companies, is you don't have the control that you used to have over the monetization, over how content even is presented. Changes how we develop our content. AMP is restrictive, it has constraints. Those constraints are important, but they're there. And for many development teams, it's upturning the apple cart. And then how do we integrate our ad solution? How do we integrate our analytics solution? How do we make sure that our UX is exactly what we want it to be based on what we know for our users? But what I think is most important is there were opportunities, and that really had to do with renewed collaboration. We were able to collaborate with our teams in different ways than we had before. We all were set upon how we run our website for many years. We do a big redesign every 3 or 4 years, and then we just live in that redesign. But now we had a chance to take our most important page, was our recipe page, tear it apart, take the constraints of AMP, and then build it back up again with our users' needs in mind. And actually, that was actually a very incredible experience within our group of being able to do that, and in a very fast way. This is our journey to AMP. Some of this stuff isn't AMP related, but I wanted to talk about it. The first is the rich snippet, which is, we think about how important it is to stand out in search results. If you have the opportunity, you should take it. Recipe-rich snippets was incredibly important. 20% of click-through is impacted by the recipe-rich snippet. If we lose it, and we have lost it before, it was very, very bad. And then we went to rich cards, and these are called host lists. You've seen these before. Last year, these came out. And we moved into the rich cards and the summary list. This is the top of the mobile recipe page, or mobile page for the recipe query. And then after the AMP launch in October, we started thinking, well, what do we need to do? How can we build an AMP recipe page? So we built a prototype. It's rudimentary, but we built it, and it took about 2 days to build. It was fast. It doesn't have everything we need in it, but it actually got the point across. And then we worked with Google at their I/O demo, in one of their sessions, to showcase our AMP page it's actually a host carousel on the top right there. And then it was time to say, all right, this is becoming real. It's talked about at Google I/O. It's talked about, again, all of the different press. It's time to talk about how we're going to revise our AMP page to make it something that we're ready to publish and go to market with. And that included adding analytics, adding ads. And then September 20th, AMP launched. In AMP Organic, in both the organic listing and in the host carousel is now launched as well. So this is kind of our roadmap of how we got here. So how do we reconstruct the recipe page? So on the left-hand side is our AMP page, and the right-hand side is our mobile page. We did a lot of things. We made a lot of changes, and as you'll see in the metrics slide, maybe some things need to be tweaked. We're learning from this. Binti's exactly right. This is all new. We're learning from this, especially this stuff, for the stuff that's not news. We made our header image larger, and we reduced our header tools. We wanted to bring focus in to the viewport. And we know through our research that users care a lot about that in primary image. They want to really focus in on what they're trying to make. We removed the sharing tools below the viewport, and we actually removed some navigation. Again, to bring that focus in to help the user make a decision. We pare supplemental content down from 23 items to 3 items. So below all of this is just a list of related recipe content. We took it out. We just have 3. We also wanted the page to load fast. And we moved all decision cues into the viewport. So this is an iPhone 6, but a 6 Plus is going to have a larger viewport. It's going to be varied. But anything that we know a user cares about for making decisions about making this recipe, we put in the viewport. That's reviews, that's cook time, total time, prep time, that's nutrition data, that's serving size, that's Bobby Flay, if you care about Bobby Flay. And that's the stars as well. The star ratings are critical. We also removed some features that we had to remove. AMP wasn't ready at the time with some of the things we needed to do, like integrating video, site registration, site logins, and even some A/B testing, which is now available in AMP, but not in the way that we have been doing it. And finally, we converted server-side code to work client-side. This had a lot to do with the star ratings and the reviews. This was not a part of the AMP framework when we started doing this. We had to actually contribute and make it happen. So we took our existing page, we moved into this AMP page here. And what were the results for speed? Well, they were big. We had a 42-point PSI improvement. We went from 41 to 83. We were at 91, actually, but we had to put ads on the page. It was green, it was beautiful, and then we had to screw it up. But this thing, the dreaded render blocking is gone here on the AMP, and it made me very happy. That's a big deal. But how did this look for our users? So this is kind of an average summary of some of our recipe pages. We took the total load time for DOM load, 31 seconds down to 3 seconds. And also some interesting things too. Start render, which is what when this page starts drawing, you went from 7 seconds down to a little over 2 seconds. Those are all within those thresholds that we know are important. Number of requests went down. Some of this is obvious. We're doing the page is developed differently. And then we went from fully loaded from 41 seconds to 10 seconds. Fully loaded. You still can use the page after the DOM load, but fully loaded at 10 seconds. These are huge numbers. The question is, did it work? And it's only been about 6 weeks. Actually, it was still rolling out even after the 20th. So actually, this is about 3 weeks of data. But what we have here in the top left chart is actual penetration for AMP. So the blue is the regular recipe page, and the red is AMP, of 100% of visits to our recipe pages on mobile. Now, I would expect it to be higher, actually, but a lot of clicks go to that summary carousel, which is not AMP yet. I say yet. It probably will be. We don't know. Interesting things that also came from this is we actually had an increase in new users. This was also the big question, is this going to increase acquisition? Because it's not, AMP in organic is not re-ranked, right? There's no ranking change. It's just, do people going to care about that little logo? Is this something that's going to matter to them? Are they trained? Do they need more time? And what we think we found is that yes, there's a potential that we're actually getting a boost off the little AMP logo. One little caveat to this, or a little example, we had a recipe page that was ranking #1, an AMP page in organic, and also was #1 in the carousel. So literally they were beside each other, and people chose the AMP page. They did not choose the carousel. So I wish everything was perfectly ranked like that, but we don't get that privilege. Some other things that are a little bit troublesome, but also things that we think we can work through. We saw a pretty large decline in page views per visit. Now, recipe pages don't have high engagement, right? They get, Ventinos, they only get like 1.4, 1.5 page views per visit. But because we took so many call to actions off the page, we reduced it dramatically. There's a good chance that was why. There's also other reasons too. And then the bounce rate actually went up. Now, again, just as engagement is low in recipe pages, bounce rate is very high on recipe pages. If you have done a good job with your recipe, your bounce rate is going to be high. It's going to be probably 80%. That's just something that we know. But it actually was higher for AMP, and there could be reasons to that. Some key takeaways, going to speak a little bit more about what we just talked about. Slightly higher acquisition, lower engagement. Are we too satisfying? Is the page too good? And what I mean is it too fast? Is it fast enough they don't need to scroll? Are all the decision cues in the viewport giving too much to the user? Is the AMP cartridge itself, you know what I'm talking about, the blue and the thing, people click on that, do they need to go back to our site? Then they go right back into Google. It's probably, we all know the answer to that. And further SERP changes and page changes may impact the kinds of performance we're seeing. It's so early. 3 weeks of data is nothing. We can't even get loyalty metrics based on that. The constraints, technical constraints, actually were very good for us. It allowed us to focus on the user and focus on our needs of the user and really think about what we want from that content. The tools and forums are great, and they're just getting better. I think being open source really obviously helps that. The project is moving fast. When we started working on the recipe page, there was very little in components that we could actually use. You saw the page, it was very rudimentary. Now there's all kinds of accordions and different types of ad units, and it's just growing, which means we have to stay on top of it if we want to continue to maximize our engagement and make sure that there are no problems and we need to fix problems. But it's something where we have to keep an eye on, but it's exciting, but it's also potentially risky. We had challenges with ad integration. Our DFP integration, is customized, and so we could iframe it in with AMP or we do various things, but it was challenging. Analytics was also so challenging. We couldn't tag every interaction on the page in the way we used to. These were not small problems, but we worked through them. And as I said, one of the most important things I think we learned from this is that, especially in search, it takes, sometimes with these external factors, these external changes have big implications on how we work as an organization. It actually makes us better when we're able to strip everything away and start over again. And I think that's really, regardless of what happens with AMP, that was one thing that I think we took away. So that's it. Thank you very much.